one night I was like really lost, and you kind of broke down what I need to do to get to that spot. And it's basically, I just have to have faith. And where we are right now, Swagger and Blade, you cutting hair, that's your passion. This is it.
I came to here, this shop, when it first opened. My wife had said, you know, like, you've been talking about going to barber school for a long time. You're miserable in this job. You're losing yourself. You're not being the person that you would say defines you. I came over here to get a haircut, and I sat through the whole haircut silent because I was terrified.
Yeah.
I was just afraid of what it was going to look like. You know, despite the fact that I didn't like the job, I was getting paid very well. And at this point, I'm a married man, and I paid off all the financial harms that I had done. I sat down with Shane silent and said nothing. And I got back up and I walked over to the end of this room right here. And one of the other barbers here said, when are you going to just do it? When are you just going to be a barber? And this is a guy that I used to bartend with. And he knew, like, he went to barber school because we had a conversation in the bar about me wanting to go to barber school. And he preceded me into the trade.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I've been thinking about it. And Shane was like, that's awesome. Like, I was like, is it, you know, the offer's still on the table, would you still apprentice me? And he said, for sure. Like, if you're serious about this thing, I'll apprentice you. And you're going to spend 1.5 years of your time here learning all the aspects of this trade. And if at the end of that time, myself and the other barbers here see that you are at the level that you can cut here, then you'll have a chair here. And if not, we're going to part as friends. I'm going to tell you I love you. I'm going to give you a hug, and I'm going to send you on your way to work at another barbershop until a time that you're ready to do this deal.
That must have been terrifying.
It was horrifying.
Yeah.
And, you know, I quit a job where I was making like a good amount of money at, let's see, I'm 43 now, so it's like 39 years old, and making good money and married and doing all the right things. And
yeah, that's cruise control.
Cruise control.
Yeah.
And I came into a position where I had to humble myself and sweep this floor for $40 a day for 1.5 years.
I was wearing a kilt cleaning windows, you know? And like, I just, you know, my ego tells me that like I should be doing, you know, something else more than this, because not necessarily that I envisioned like this per se, but being creative and using, you know, the things about me that I loved, you know what I mean? Like talking with people and marketing and things like that. I loved all that stuff. And here I am. I don't even know what I was making, but like I'm in a kilt, and it was the most beautiful experience. Like the humility there's so much beauty in that, you know?
Absolutely.
You know, and like coming in here, I mean, that was like the best way for you to, one, reconnect probably with yourself, right? I mean, because that's probably one of the things that I took away from like that humble experience, was like I kind of just was able to like get back to zero, like
for sure,
in some weird way, you know. You know, like it's got to be. You know, that, and then, you know, for you to be able to like come in here and watch all these guys and just really just kind of put all that, like, I wish I was here, because now you're here. Yep. And you're in that moment, and when you're in that moment, you're like, dude, this, like, I'm doing it, right? Like the things that like you've prayed about, right, or things that you used to dream of, man, you're doing it, you know, like that's a fucking magic moment. And you've gotten through this, like, in this fear, but like what carries you, you know, even into that moment? Like we kind of spoke before, you know, you're a man of faith, you know, and you know, I struggled with that for a little bit, you know, because I felt cowardly, you know, but that is just like that's been like a huge or the driving force in what I've been doing for the last 4 or 5 years, you know. And so, like, you know, talk to me about your experience in there, because, you know, it's not easy. It was like work for me.
Before I got sober, I mean, God is the reason I'm sober, 100,000%. You know, the leg. I'm one of those people that you know, I believe that God in a lot of situations is like a performance enhancing drug, right? Like you pray for the strength and for the ability, he'll clear the path for you, but you got to do the legwork,
right?
You know, and that's really what I did. Now, interesting that we're here at Swagger and Blade because Shane, the owner of this place, has always been a really strong man of God. He's a Bible reading Christian. I'm not always. He's like me. He's like us. He has a sordid past also, but he kind of came into the realization of his life through his faith in God. And he was talking to me about that in the chair a lot. And I remember like being newly sober and still like not really having that belief system in play yet. And he was extraordinarily instrumental in getting me into that place because I'm seeing this big guy who's tattooed and rides a motorcycle and he's got a lot of the same interests that I do. And I'm like, well, I'm a tattooed guy and like I want to do this stuff. And, what it did is it made God cool. You know what I mean? Like straight up made God cool. And a little bit down the road, I established this relationship with God. And I looked through a whole bunch of different paths. I read books on Buddhism, on Hinduism, on all these different things. And what I found out is that the God of my upbringing, the Christian God, Jesus, was what made sense to me, but not in the way it was taught to me when I was younger. Mm-hmm. So what I see now is that I'm a man of spirituality. I'm a man of relationship with God, and not necessarily the dogma, not the religion part of it.
Right.
And that was like the thing that put the nail in the coffin that I was supposed to do this, because my feet had been trained to go to God with all these big questions. And the big question on this, whether I would come here or not, was like, should I be doing this? Like my family's going to take a huge hit for me doing this. And it's not even a guarantee. So I went home and I actually dropped my Bible on the ground. And I picked it up and I opened to 1 Thessalonians 4:11. I'm not like a quoter of scriptures. I'm not that good at it. But this one I'll never forget, because it said, "Make it your life's ambition to lead a quiet life and work with your hands as I have told you." And I was like, whoa, dude. So I called Shane and I'm like, bro, like you're never going to believe it. Like I opened to this and he's like, cool, so are we going to do this? And I'm like, yeah. And I gave my 2 weeks notice at the place I was working at, and I went to the vocational school because as per Shane, he said, I'm going to teach you everything you're going to need to know about how to cut hair. You need to go and find out how you can pass this test.
Just thinking like in society now that if you say the word God, people just automatically are just like, whoa, don't be pushing none of that on me. But then when things get tough, like they have been in the last few months, people have been muttering that word.
I mean, I can't speak for humanity as a whole, but I can speak for myself. And for myself, like, the God concept meant that I would have to throw away the things that I was doing. Right? The God concept meant that I wasn't in control anymore. The God concept meant that I would have to rely on God to get me to the next place and just be in the action business and not in the results business. I would just have to show up and try to be a better person every day. Try to show up and when I was wrong, which I am all the time, even to this day, I make mistakes every day. There is in no way, shape, or form that I am a perfect Christian, that I'm a perfect sober man, that I'm a perfect barber, that I'm a perfect human. I am flawed to the core, and I thank God for it, because I think it makes me more relatable to people who are having problems with that deal.
Yeah.
And what winds up happening for me is that I just got to a place where I was out of options. Where I had tried all my ways. I had tried to arrange all of the things in order so that I would be able to walk this path cleanly, and it never works out that way, right? Like you can't.
Yeah.
You just can't.
Yeah. No.
So it's easier for me to surrender to the day and just be like, hey, whatever happens, happens, and I'm going to try to show up for the best of my ability than to try to well, this can't go this way, because that's not reality.
Right. I can see people get jammed up about that, and you want to talk to them, Like if I'm cool with somebody that like I've never had a real spiritual conversation with, I don't always, that's not my first suggestion. Like, oh man, maybe you should think about like a spiritual life. You know what I mean? Like it's done wonders for me. I don't say that because I just feel like it's going to be dismissed like right away. So I kind of keep, my faith close to myself.
Sure.
And that's that's cool, for me. I'm not going to try and push anything on it, but I just think that that it's just one of those things that when you get there, it opens up this whole other world for you. And I don't know. It's been like a beautiful thing to see a guy like you, like you said before, that these guys in here, they made God cool for you. You know what I mean? They're all like big tatted up dudes riding bikes. You're like, these guys believe in God. Like it must be all right. And it's just that's kind of the example that you've set for me, and for and I hope to be able to set for other people. By speaking so casually about it and and letting people know that I'm not like the most perfect person, you know what I mean? And I don't, when you're more of like a relatable person and you're not the guy that's like kicking the dog when nobody's looking, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Before you were asking, like you were saying, I'm not somebody that that pushes it on people, and I wouldn't say that I am either. I mean, I'm somebody that if they're if they're willing to talk about it and they ask me about it, I'll talk to them about it, because personally, like I feel as though my actions and reactions to things, I try at least to make them attractive. I try to make them what like God would have me be. I try, and I fail all the time, but I'm willing to admit that. So here, I mean, that we actually do a Bible study here, which we call Prayer Warriors, on Wednesday nights. And it's a bunch of guys and girls now that get together, and we dive into the Word a little bit, and then we'll talk about something relevant and real that's happening in our lives, like be it some kind of grace that God's afforded us, or what we thought about that, what emotion that what we read invoked. And we go around the room. There's probably like 25 people here last Wednesday. Nice. And everybody gets a chance to talk about something about God that fires them up and tries to get everybody else fired up. And through hanging out with Shane, who is the owner here, is one of my closest friends, and he and I are sort of like a spiritual accountability partners to each other. We're always like going to each other with things like I know I really screwed up here, man. You gotta help me out, or like I'm really struggling with believing that this is gonna happen.
Right.
That's a huge one, man.
Right.
I think that's important, because it's so easy to get blinded by fear, right? Because that kept me from doing this gig for a long time, and I mean, I'm 100,000% confident that I'm going to be a 60-year-old man with a bunch of blurred tattoos on my arm, standing next to here talking about, I remember back in my day while I'm cutting your hair.
Yeah.
Because this is the path that I'm on. This is where I'm supposed to be, and I'm sure of it. And it gets reminded me over and over again by talking to people in my chair, like people who are either struggling with like addiction issues or struggling with God, and they ask me about it. Mm-hmm. I don't even need to bring the topic up. It just happens. I also got in the habit, Shane actually taught me this a long time ago, and it was a way to calm my nerves when I first started doing this, because I was still scared.
Right.
That I actually pray for every client that's in my chair. I just say like, hey, I don't know if Darren knows about God, but if he does, I'd love him to know the way I know him. I'd love him to know the peace that I have in my life. I do that with every client. They don't know, but I'm putting the cape on them.
Yeah.
And I guess they're going to know now.
Yeah.
But you guys are welcome.
Yeah.
So, man, I mean, for sure it's a church for me. I mean, I'm one of those people that believe we are the church. Anybody that believes in God, we are the church, all of us.
Right.
It doesn't have to be in a building, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
People sharing love, people sharing tolerance, people sharing forgiveness, people sharing just grace.
Yeah. you've had a long day, and I appreciate you taking time. And I wanted to talk to you because you know, I'd never done an episode really where I've talked about faith with anybody, and I always admired the way that you carry yourself spiritually and what you do. So thank you for your time, brother.
Yeah, of course.
All right, man.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Love you, homeboy.
Love you. Gramps.